All right, everyone, there was an attempt to put a slanted poll on Facebook the other day. It was by The Economist. Now, The Economist, literally, it puts up a poll saying, do you think migration is beneficial or a detriment, basically, to your country? And at first, of course, is tilted in favor of immigration because they actually include an open border style like hashtag, and then they basically are leading people as well with their second post, which is attached to the poll itself, saying, can people who are basically scumbags who hate immigrants, can they be reasoned with, essentially? So it's a very open border situation. They were hoping that the net result, of course, would be that people would say, oh yeah, immigrants are like a great boon to our nation. Now, the first problem is that they're talking about migration. Are you talking about mass uncontrolled migration, or are you talking about, hey, we have an immigration system? If you're talking about a legal, controlled immigration situation, most people are largely for that. They're like, yeah, you take a few skilled individuals from another country. Sometimes in industry, you need to give it steroids, basically, because, otherwise you have to wait for years with too few people in that field, so you fill it with people who are on work visas or they immigrate here. That's fine. I think what The Economist was talking about, though, is basically the lead up to open borders, which is the shattered border situation we have in much of the world today. It's not open borders. You do have immigration policy. You do have borders in the physical sense of fences or embankments or something, but they're just not controlled properly. They need reform. Now, the left, of course, says the proper reform is tear down that wall. We're all one people. Nation states are bigoted for some reason, despite the fact that they've been, they were a major advancement at the time. They seemed to work pretty well for thousands of years, but now they're evil and you're a bad person, even if it's a multiracial nation. And they look at the United States, which is multiracial. They think like, oh, you bigoted nationalistic Americans wanting to control the immigration situation. Meanwhile, lack of immigration control is leading to a tuberculosis epidemic in parts of the American South. Is leading to the spread of disease all over the place. By the way, the same Syrian civil war that leads to so many problems in Europe with, mass migration of refugees, some of which are not actually Syrian, also caused polio outbreaks. Like, we're very, very close to eradicating polio. It could be the third or fourth, the Jimmy Carter parasite there. That's almost been eradicated. I think they just kicked it out of the South Sudan recently. It could be the third or fourth disease we finally snuff out of existence, along with rinderpest and smallpox. The problem being, of course, we're never going to accomplish that if you have areas that are destabilized where polio is still, present a little bit. We could eradicate it. It would take us a couple years tops. With minimal effort, we can eradicate polio in this world. Do you realize how big an advancement that is? Polio, though, like the fucking worst nightmare 100 years ago, other than smallpox itself, we still haven't quite gotten rid of it, despite the fact that I believe it is less infectious than smallpox. You need a campaign to eradicate it. You don't want it to come roaring back to life the next time there's a world depression or something. But The Economist then, it has the open borders hashtag, and basically the gulling people with its next little thing there. It's like, oh, can we convince these people that immigration is a good thing? What kind of immigration? But then the poll got taken up by people who obviously think that it's bullshit, and started spreading it around, myself included, and pretty soon it was heavily tilted in favor of the fact that mass migration is not good for nations. And that's an observable truth. If you're talking about a proper immigration system, it can be a benefit to a nation. But if you're talking about a system in which any person, for any reason, can just walk across your border and say, hey, I'm here now, I'm going to do whatever I want to do, that's not good. No, it is not beneficial to the culture. It wouldn't be beneficial. It's not beneficial to the third world either. People who say that you're a bigot if you believe this, part of the reason for that is, and this is discussed openly within anthropological circles, it has for 20, 30 years. Within the scientific community itself, the concept is this. If you have this kind of situation, you can actually leech the donor culture of all of its talented individuals. The people who are going to leave that culture disproportionately are people who have been really stressed. This disproportionately is going to affect people that were doing okay, people who are at least marginally skilled or educated that no longer can practice. Like in Venezuela right now, a lot of the people who have fled are students. They're college kids. skilled individuals. They've left because they can get a job in another country. They can go to Colombia or Brazil or fucking Guyana or whatever. Make their way up to Central America, maybe Mexico, even to the United States. They're capable of, they're skilled individuals. These aren't just, random illiterate peasants that are trying to migrate. And then you do get a lot of people who aren't skilled as well, who won't be able to get a job in a Western culture, which require, Western culture in general, to have any quality of life at this point, at the very least, you'd have to get a GED or graduate high school. Preferably, you've gone to college or gotten some sort of training. You're studying something. You got a certification in some field, some sort of special training. What person from some, migratory situation is likely to have those qualifications? In some cases, these people can't speak the lingo of the host nation, especially when you're talking about, if you're talking about English. English is the lingua franca. A lot of people, even in impoverished nations, have some grasp of English. But what about German? What about Hungarian? What about Polish? How many people migrating from the Middle East, if we're talking about the Syrian civil war or Libya having been destabilized, or Tunisia or anything, how many of these people are likely to know any of these other European languages? And they can't really, the UK is an island, so it's a little bit more of a controlled situation. The rest of Europe doesn't speak English now, does it? It speaks a host of other languages. Therein lies a little bit of a problem. I can see why people in Western Europe would be like, oh yeah, okay. So our government wants to take people in who don't feel positively towards us. They think that we've ruined their nation, and they're not wrong when they think this. In order to put them on welfare, basically, because they're not going to be able to find a job most of the time. And that is the truth. Most of these people are not employed. Most of these people also are not women and children. The whole bringing the families over thing happens later. The first wave of people were largely young males who then provide an anchor for their families if that's applicable. And of course this then just causes a social breakdown of order as well within parts of Europe. It's not so much here in the United States. We don't have nearly as much of a problem with this situation, but Europe has bitterness everywhere, it seems. People start to, you take a once homogenized community that's like basically the fucking Shire and inject it with people that know nothing about that culture or scenario, there's going to be potentially problems. And that once peaceful area, now all of a sudden you have groups of people that are at each other's throats. It's just the way that humans tend to be. Even if you think it calms down later, or it's the result of evil and bigotry in man, it still is natural. You have to be pragmatic. You have to be truthful about this situation. Think globalism and utopian bullshit is great all you want. Look at the reality on the ground. It's not the same. And it's being led by people who aren't affected by it. They live in gated communities. Here, they live in gated communities or a Manhattan penthouse. Over there, they live in some fucking former castle or manor somewhere out in the middle of rural France or in Tuscany. That's their living situation over there. They are sheltered from the decisions that they make for others, while foisting it on everyone else as a moral issue. The Economist lost in its own poll, despite the fact that it blatantly was trying to skew it. So it was pretty funny. And it's an attempt at propaganda. It's polling. I'm sure they'll come out and say, well, evil Nazis or something spread our poll around. That's why the result is this way. We disavow our own poll or something. That's probably what they'll do. But actually, it's the opposite is fundamentally true. You were attempting to propagandize, and you got your shit shoved in, basically, like, what was it, 60-40 thereabouts. It's pretty funny. So yeah, it's not a big news item, but it's humorous. The immigration debate continues to rage on. It shouldn't, though. I mean, the donor culture is harmed, along with the host culture. It's a thing, this is openly spoken of. Look, for people who haven't studied any anthro, they took women's studies instead. All you have to do is fucking talk to an archaeological professor who's done field work in other countries, and they'll own up to it if they're being honest. They know it. I heard this from multiple professors. When I was at UVM, of all places, they're like, yeah, mass migration. All of these movements of refugees and immigrants actually are keeping these countries fucking poor. Because that one person with a master's degree on this fucking island left the island. Well, then they don't have a very high overall educational attainment. It's going to stay deep third world and provide fewer opportunities to... The next Einstein could be born in one of these countries. They're never going to actually end up being the next Einstein, though, because they're never going to have access to that kind of education only one time out of a million. You know, they might migrate, they might go get a good job, but they're not going to attain as much as they could. They fucking cured cancer. And the world has robbed itself through its stupidity. That's about all. Peace out.